So tell me when to go. All ready? Oh, okay, are you present?
Okay, good. I'm ready.
We're ready then.
Let the minutes show it started at 10:45.
Yes. All right. So, calling the meeting, the Texas charter meeting or the 501c3 charter meeting, right? Charter meeting to order. The date is Friday, May 12th, and the time is 10:45 a.m. and a quorum is present. We have all board members with the exception of two, Dan Madalena and Lance Losi. My memory is fading, but not terrible.
That's good.
And the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting was posted as required by law. So, thanks. Do we have any items to go in a closed session for?
Do not. We don't have anyone here from the public.
And no one's here from the public. That's from one movie. Sorry.
That's good.
That's good. So you're up. What do you want to talk about? The consent items first, or you want to? Is there anything you want to talk? You want to delete some because you normally?
Let's do consent items. You've seen the consent items are in your Dropbox. You can see we have items 1 through 18. As you always see, you can see mainly financial items, minutes, leases. You do have a couple of things new with name changes. The address change of the school. You know, we're building a building over here, so we're moving a school, Quest, and then Tyler's getting a new building. So it's all pretty simple things. There is adding Corey to the North Star bank account and removing previous employee. So you don't have any questions, we're asking that you approve consent items 1 through 18.
All right. I will make a motion to approve consent items 1 through 18 under section B of the agenda. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ken. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay. That consent items 1 through 18 pass unanimously. Good. So we'll go to separate items. Do you want to keep it in order here and start with number 1, or?
Yes, sir.
All right. And this
We're going
one's
to move number 4. We're going to move till after the budget discussion and training that we're going to have. But
Okay.
the first 3 we can do now.
okay. So we want to start with number 1. Who's go with?
Robert,
Excuse
you
me.
want to talk about Amarillo and the right group?
So
Thank you.
back last summer, we came to you guys about purchasing. We constructed a building in Amarillo. It's been 3 years ago now. And next door, this last summer, we had a building that came available that was like a dance hall center that was right next door. So in order to continue to expand the grade levels and the number of sections that he has in that school, the building next door was being offered at a really good price of $700,000. So we went ahead and made the purchase of $700,000. You guys approved that last summer. So that was last fall. So we're now working on, what we said at that time was we were not sure what the total cost would be to do the renovations on the building and to put in classrooms. So we're coming back now with the renovation costs. And that's what we're asking you to approve today. And since it is a little over $1 million, if you the actual cost of it is $1,095,651. So that includes putting in the classrooms that we need, the additional classrooms for the high school. It includes adding some additional parking outside and behind the school. And it will be able to, this fall of 17-18, we're currently at about 395 kids total. We're going to increase to 460 in ADA this fall, and then to 520 in the fall of 18-19. So we're increasing enough over the next 2 years to pay for this, but we wanted to bring this back to the board for approval, so we're asking approval for the construction cost, and that's through the right group for $1,095,600. So, any questions on that?
So the wording only says
The contractual.
architectural services, so we're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, it's not architectural services.
We're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, so what's the actual contract cost?
On the parts of the building.
On the right group, right? That's what this
His
is.
is 6% of that. His part would be 6% of this 1,095.
And has the board already approved the architectural services?
1,095,000,
No,
right?
Never
No,
approved it.
no. The board has not approved the architectural.
So we could approve today the architectural services so they can start that. And we can either bring it back as a separate item or as a consent item now that we've discussed it, and put it as a consent item.
Yeah, that's I think this consent is fine, but just on the cost of the right group, so we're going to approve the contract at 6% of the total 1.095 million, which would be a little over $60,000. Just in there.
All right.
That was my math.
All right.
Mhm.
It's the round numbers are easier.
So are we approving the $1,095,000
No,
for the construction, or are we approving just the six, whatever that 6%?
just the
number is?
contracts, which has that
6%.
condition.
Okay.
What I was thinking.
So we would need to change that to where it's just related to the right group, like those other ones we've done on architectural. Does that say architectural?
Well, it says the board
You have
approves the
the-
contract with right group in the manner of, so it's, the contract with right group isn't, well, unless we are contracting with them for the entire 1 million.
We're not.
Yeah, so I think that's probably wrong. That paragraph, therefore, needs to be changed to whatever the terms are of the agreement. Just
Say 6% of actual cost.
yeah, and 6% rather than put an actual cost because it might change a little bit.
And then we're going to, if everyone's in agreement, we'll add it as a consent item in July to change the actual approval to receive bank financing, use of bonds, or use of bonds, and increasing the actual cost.
Right, yeah, and then
Lose that.
just, the normal chart you also give us for, what the attendance expectations are, where you see yourselves, or the school being, when it's in operation as far as revenue expense. That works.
What does that mean to the whole project? You're gonna have to do all the architectural stuff first, right?
Do you have enough time or do you need approval for the project before July?
Yes, it's got to get started, or it's not going to get done by August.
But they
We
still,
wait
they have to
till
do the
July
architect.
to do the full approval. So
Can you do up to the whatever amount? What was the original amount?
there
The
was
board
only
approved.
700,000 that was approval of the building, so we never did get approval for the construction cost. We didn't have the bids on that.
So the question to all of you is, are you okay with us moving forward and you ratify it in July? So please ask any questions related to it. So we bought the building for $7.
You have the AIA. They've seen the April of that AIA. It's in the Dropbox, right?
Can we approve
Um,
not to exceed person?
no,
You can get it
no,
there.
I know I have it.
Can they even, I don't think they can really even vote on it because it's not an item on the agenda.
Oh, it's not, that's right, the architect.
I don't think you can approve up to. I think you just got to give us administration your comfort level that we start, and then in July you ratify.
That's all fine.
And I guess you could kill the deal in July if you didn't like it, and we would be halfway through or something.
But you're following the same process you follow for all your deals,
Right.
so the likelihood of us
At least you're asking right now. I've been asked that over the years, can we go ahead and get started? I said to the superintendent, if you're sure you're gonna get a majority vote when you put it on the agenda, and, just say, call them and get commitment. Well, you've got the group here today, so if they say go for it, well, then I think you can count on them to ratify.
So what we
the
could do,
AIA rate's just not,
what we could do,
the AIA contract is right in the Dropbox. It's just not worded right on. So
Is this not what's just the architect, or is this
that's not just the architect. You notice in that.
just the construction company?
That's the construction company and the architecture fees and everything.
is that a final agreement?
That's
Can you go to the bottom?
That's the guarantee right there, Plains Builders. That's the guaranteed maximum price. So it didn't get translated to the.
All right. Well, we can do two things then. We can just approve the contract with Wright, because that's different than that. That's the, well, Wright's, but that's just talking about that they're working off of the Terrence Wright prepared plans.
Right.
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 What's
So-
it say at the very top?
So we can still make a motion to approve the expenditure for Wright at 6% of the total costs of this agreement, or the contract, or guaranteed maximum price amendment slashing. And then we can then go back and we can, even though it's not on the agenda, or do we have a problem with state law with it not being on the agenda?
Which one?
Yeah.
The latter, by approving this agreement,
Yeah, we can't do that.
can't do it?
So if you would approve number one, the 6% of the $1 million number, then you'll know that you've already approved moving forward. We just don't have it on the agenda. So when we come back in July, you will ratify that contract if you're in agreement.
I'm in agreement.
School districts, I think, all the time in a hurry, the superintendent will tell the contractor, get started. I'll get the contract approved. A smart architect, a smart contractor knows that he cannot enforce a contract that hasn't been approved by the board. Well, we're not going to do that to him. So if the board is saying to the superintendent, go on and do what you need to do and put it on the agenda when you can, and we'll ratify it, then I think he can break.
Open the board resolution again. I think all you got to do there is put the 6% in there and leave the dollar amount.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's just for the architectural agreement. So it's a board approves the contract, which is true, in the amount of 6% of the $1,095,000. All right, we all good with that?
I'm good.
And then we will come back and either have we'll probably have a separate item in July that's ratifying. All right, and if you don't agree at that point, me and Robert will go do something else. All right.
Good. Yeah. All right, so I'll make a motion to approve separate item number 1 and the approving of the contract for architectural services with the Wright Group for the previously purchased property located in Amarillo, Texas. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Martin Reynolds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You say aye?
Aye, I'm
All
sorry.
right, that's good. All right, no one objected. Separate item number 1 and the contract with the Wright Group passes unanimously. All right, moving to item number 2, closure of the Vista Academy, Dallas. We discussed this during the last meeting in March.
All right, so this is if you remember, this is the campus that has been in existence for 7-8 years in Pleasant Grove, and we have since, in the last couple of years, opened 2 other campuses in that general area. So we are actually merging and moving those kids, parents that want to move those kids, to those other 2 campuses. The reason it says closure is it is TEA language. We're actually closing that campus number and returning it to TEA. So we did discuss this, and now we have an actual agenda item where we're asking for approval to close the campus number and return it to TEA. It doesn't mention returning. That happens when you close it. It automatically goes back.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
What happens to it when it's returned? TE.
If it was a separate charter, it would free up space under the charter cap, but because it's a campus, not a charter, it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything really, except we can't use the number. But it doesn't free up anything.
I move we accept item 2.
Let's move to approve item number 2.
That we approve the closure of the Vista Academy of Dallas.
Okay, I just know he's going to breathe down my neck about making sure we word it correctly. Okay, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again, separate item number 2, passes unanimously and approved the closure of the Vista Academy of Dallas.
That's one thing. I always say that.
Is that okay?
For the record, yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes, when they're recording, they can't remember was it unanimous or not. So if you said it in the record, that helps. Agreed down there.
Has anyone ever not voted in favor of the motion?
There probably was one board meeting somewhere sometime.
They may just do that out of form. All right, consent item number 3, consider approval for a change of fiscal year start date to July 1, beginning in next year, the 18-19. Is it September 1 now?
It's September 1 now.
Yes.
And this changed a couple of years ago. The law changed that allows you to have a July 1st.
In the benefit for this
The
is?
biggest benefit is you're starting school in August. So you're doing all this work of preparing the budget, and then also the budget is overlapping. So you're buying all this furniture and everything. You're starting school in, August, on August 15th, and fiscal year doesn't start till September.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward, and it'll help immensely with not only internal here with getting the work done, of getting the budget, and then this will change when the audit is due. It's 4 months after the end of the fiscal year. So that will change as well. So the big board meetings we've had, which have been August and July, will move around by 2 months. But not only will it help us internally, but it'll help the schools because they'll be able to purchase things in the new fiscal year. Because some of this, we're shutting off the fiscal year for a week. We're closing the books, and so it's been a hassle to buy product even though you're trying to start school. I'm sorry.
That's what I was going to say. It allows us to close in the middle of the summer when school's out. So most of your staff's out, we can close, and it helps us go into the next 2 years. So now we're not having to move it right at the beginning of school year when everything's rushing like crazy to buy everything and all that. So we're all super glad this is an option.
Okay, that's good. Fairly innocuous. Is there any, systems changing that you're going to make sure that you're doing?
For the most part, it'll change how we set up the system for the fiscal year. But
But that's just something in the future that you worry about? It's not something that's going to
We've already consulted like our auditors to get that nature, just to make sure whatever you get here looks like. It's pretty straightforward.
Right, so, but the budget we're going to approve for 2017, 2018 will take us through
This budget will take
June
us through
30th
August.
or August?
This will take us through August.
Overlap?
It will overlap, and we'll come back with an amendment if you approve number 30.
Okay,
This would be a problem if it was lengthening the year. Really not a problem. Shortening it.
Yeah.
So
Makes
we're not
sense.
going to exceed our expenses, violate state law.
okay, but then your revenue will come up a little short because it's August, right?
Actually, we'll have earned it by the end of the
Yeah,
school year.
sorry, yeah, that's what I was
We
saying.
just won't have received it, so it'll be like a receipt.
Okay. A receivable, so it's an asset to the earlier budget, and it would be cash received in the newer budget. So I don't think it matters how you account for that.
We earn it over the course of the school year. With the school year.
Okay. So again,
Just how we want it. accounting perspective, a little earlier than that.
So it's not a big impact. You'll still show it in the earlier year. Okay. Any other questions? I'm good. I'll make a motion to approve. I need to put my glasses on. The approval of the change of the fiscal year to start date of July 1st, beginning on the 2018-2019 school year. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kent. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. The motion to approve the change of the fiscal year to July 1st, 2018 passes unanimously. All right. And we're going to just move the timing of the consideration of the approval of the budget.
Correct.
You want to do the discussion items?
If you don't mind.
I don't.
So we are, we've mentioned this, we did not have it listed as a discussion item, but we're talking about Dallas. We mentioned the challenges we've had with Premier High School of Richardson, the location it's in, the clientele, with the type of program. So we've been really just trying to finish out the lease, and the lease is coming to an end this summer. So we're looking to still move that number. This is a discussion item. We're not asking you to vote, but we will either be coming back in July with closure, like we have on number 2 for Vista Dallas, or we will have a change of address moving it to potentially McKinney. So this campus has never been able to go over 100. It's ranged from 60 students to, I think at one point there was a high of in the 90s. That was 3 years ago. So it's just not a good location. It's not working out. It's not serving the needs of students where we can use that somewhere else potentially. That site. Any questions on that?
Is that a rented space there?
It's a lease.
Lease space?
It was I think it was a 5-year lease.
Yeah, the lease ends this year, so.
It's not large enough to have an high school, but the clientele would prefer an high school. But the building's not big enough. It's not a bad location, then it's off of a bus line, but it's still, you have to walk back into kind of a industrial area. So it's not, you're not really seeing it driving by like most of our premiers.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, did you say, I might have just missed something. Will you look to do an high school in that?
We will not do an high school because it's
Not in
too
that
small.
location, but
We've been looking, we brought to you a couple of purchases that we did not actually win the bids on some buildings, some old ITT buildings right there by UTD. Yeah. And somebody else outbid us by.
And they've done nothing with those buildings, by the way. I saw it about a week and a half ago.
So yeah, we were looking to do maybe an high school type program or an elementary.
It would have been set up perfectly for that. So, okay.
And then the second thing is, as we always ask you to talk about board meetings, we're thinking that, we're getting to the point where it doesn't seem like we have to have them every month. We're going to keep them on the calendar, if that's okay, the second Fridays, but we're trying to do them every other. So we're thinking we won't do one in June, but we will try to do something in July that where we don't have something in August. But is that okay with everyone? Is it okay having flexibility during the summer, moving that around?
Flexibility is overrated. All right. Yeah, and right now, 14th is a good date. I'm going to Hawaii the week before.
All right, well, that was it on discussion items. Any input on that, on the calendar? Board meeting dates, other than Ben's big trip to Hawaii?
Good. Hey,
Should be as fun as Iowa. Did you go to Iowa?
I did.
Spring break?
No, not spring break. It was Easter. And it was Denison, Iowa, which is a big farm country and very close to Nebraska. And they do a lot of meat processing. And so whenever you walk out of the building you're in, you get to smell that lovely aroma in the air at all hours of the day and night. Very old town where, the young people are in their 90s.
Book your trip now.
All right,
All right, so are we going to go into closed session, Frank?
we are not. It is open and it will still be videoed. So can you put up a little video so everyone remembers they're being videoed? You can make it even smaller though,
Yes, I will.
just as a reminder. And we're looking forward to this. There's exciting things going on with Responsive Ed, and obviously it takes money to do it, and we're blessed to be in a position where we've been successful and able to do new things. We are still waiting on the legislature to determine are there additional funds. It doesn't look like there will be cuts. We're not worried about that. But the House of Representatives, their budget is increasing public ed by $1.5 billion for the biennium. And the Senate's saying there's no way, we don't have that kind of money. So we'll just have to see what happens. This budget is built without any kind of assumptions on increase in revenue. So we have several people here. Corey will be presenting a lot of the training at the beginning, talking about just finance, not budget in particular, but finance training, financial training. And then Joseph and James, Ken will be here. Did we lose Ken? Ken may be in and out. And I thought I saw him walk in. Didn't I see him come in? So there'll be people in and out talking about the budget development. We want to get your input, explain how we built it, and then get any kind of input wisdom you have to share with us as a board. So we will have lunch here. It's going to be a working lunch. We'll have lunch here by 11:30 to 11:45 from La Hacienda. But I'm going to turn it over to Corey, let him start with, I think we've got a PowerPoint we're going to bring up, and he has done a great job he's been here 6 months, 9 months, 8 months?
I'm a veteran.
8 months. So he's learned a lot and helped us out a lot, and I'm glad he's here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Corey, for financial training.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As you all know, you have requirements of having a certain number of hours. After the initial year, I think it's only six, and it's 12 initially. So this will count as those hours.
So this was something we put together. It's kind of like Chuck says, more of a finance 101 training. Some of this may be things you already know, as maybe a refresher. Some of it may be new. For me, it was a great exercise in learning. As I'm new to this industry, I'm getting familiar with state law regarding schools, charter schools specifically. Good exercise for me to put this together and kind of get through it with me. So this is as much for me as it is anybody else. Great looking cover page there with our logo and all of our brands. So basically, when it comes to your fiscal requirements here at Responsive Ed, it all starts with state law, of course. That state law drives your board policies, which in turn drive our procedures that we carry out on a daily basis from the the TCSA, which is the Texas Charter School Association policy series, module 100, as you'll see noted down there, basically determines our legal policies regarding financial matters when it comes to our school, all charter schools actually, but our school. So you'll notice that you'll see that 100 at the top for a lot of things because we are discussing module 100, TCSA legal requirements. First thing we'll talk about is use of state funds, public funds held in trust. Highlighted there, state funds received by a charter holder are public funds to be used for the benefit of the students enrolled in the charter school. They may only be used for a purpose listed under the TEA, Texas Education Code 45.105. For all you legal people, you can have your reference code there up here. They're called sites. Exactly. With this little SS, right? Number one of the things it enumerates basically the different things those funds can be used for. One, salaries for teachers and superintendents, and interest on money borrowed in short time to pay those salaries that become due before the state funds for the current year become available. They also include purchase of appliances, supplies, payment of insurance premiums. And I thought the same thing applied to the refrigerator. Payment of janitors and other employees, purchase of school sites, buying, building, repairing, and renting of school buildings, including acquiring school buildings and sites by leasing through annual payments with an ultimate option to purchase, and other purposes necessary in the conduct of the charter school as determined by the charter school.
You gotta love those catch-alls.
I was just about to say, there's always that catch-all and anything else that's for the benefit of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I was very curious. Under 4, they point out janitors and other
Yeah,
employees.
they specify janitors,
I was
right?
gonna ask JB, was that an issue with paying janitors back in the 80s or something?
I don't think so.
I guess, I mean,
Okay.
we use
Usually called
janitorial services,
custodians.
but I guess you can have actually employees that are janitors. When I was growing up, we actually had a school janitor.
Custodian.
So a little bit more on the use of state funds. The first part's a little bit review what we just said, but it's a little bit more here as well. Charter school holds these funds in trust for the benefit of the students enrolled in the charter school. So they said that a second council must be important, right? And in using the public funds, governing body of the charter holder, as well as the governing body and officers of the charter school, are held to a standard of care and fiduciary duties that a trustee owes a beneficiary under Texas law. The charter holder and the charter school must be able to demonstrate that public funds were used to secure goods and services for the benefit of the charter school students, and that the use of the public funds comported to the list outlined above. Complete original records must be maintained that clearly identify the business purpose of any disbursement of public funds and how they are aligned with the requirements of this section. One of the first things you have to do is adopt a fiscal year, and we just discussed changing hours. So, by the way, thank you all for approving that. It's gonna help us tremendously, unfortunately. Once again, you'll notice the 100 because we're still under 100. State fiscal compliance. Fiscal year, a charter holder must adopt a fiscal year that begins either on July 1st or September 1st of each year. I don't think we more need to talk about that. We just discussed changing.
Yeah, well, just curious, why not August 1st? Does it just offend the state?
I don't know why they didn't, to where you could have 2 or 3 different dates. I don't know.
They just try to limit it to they only wanted 2, so not to screw them up.
Well, September 1's always been the traditional before they changed it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess July 1st, they just let the schools out sometime in June at the latest. So maybe
Also involves
federal
grants.
Federal grants. Yeah.
July 1st, starting July 1st.
So it follows that. So then we move on to financial accounting standards. These are kind of the rules that we live by on a daily basis in my department. Financial accounting. The charter must fully comply with the following: General Accepted Accounting Principles, GAAP, because you're probably familiar with that. Texas Education Agency's Financial Accountability System Resource Guide, also known as the FASREG. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology used, but that's what it stands for. And applicable federal standards for financial management systems, including the following: financial reporting. I'm not going to read through all of them. It's financial reporting, accounting records, and internal control. We're going to hit each one of these a little bit individually in a moment, so we'll kind of dig into that here coming up. First one we'll dig into is, this is the same page, is the internal controls. Internal controls. This is actually a section of our policy here at ResponsiveEd. So I'll just read that introduction. The Fiscal Policy and Procedures Manual contains 2 sections. Part 1 contains the fiscal policies of responsive education solutions, and Part 2 contains the fiscal procedures of RES. As used herein, the term board will refer to the Board of Directors of Responsive Education Solutions. That would be you. Purpose of Fiscal Policy and Procedures Manual. The Fiscal Policy and Procedures Manual is the official document for the accounting and administrative functions conducted by RES. The Fiscal Policy and Procedures Manual should be used in conjunction with and referenced to RES's existing personnel policy manual, job descriptions, and other policy manual maintained by RES. In amending the fiscal policy and procedures manual, the fiscal policy and procedures manual contains the essential fiscal policies and procedures of RES. From time to time, as additional matters require or changes to the fiscal policy and procedures manual are appropriate, the board may amend the fiscal policies, and the CEO of RES shall amend the fiscal policies. So there's where your oversight comes into play with regard to fiscal policy. This is my little Rubik's Cube diagram. I think you might all like to see that. The components of internal control framework. Basically, internal control is a process that includes all staff at every level. And what this basically is just meant to represent is how the cross-section of all of our different areas of control and things that we do on a daily basis, not just finance, but the whole company, intersects with each other. That's what this kind of represents. I see strategic operations, reporting, compliance intersects with all these different environments, assessments, and subsidiaries, business units, division, entity levels. So all of these things are done at every level. And it's just the cross-section carries forward.
I like that cube.
It's kind of cool, isn't it? I can't take credit for that. I plagiarized it, but I'll plagiarize an A paper on it.
All right.
So to speak. Control procedures. Basically, what these do is authorized access or obligations. They're used for reconciliations and comparison of assets, analytical reviews, authorization and approval, reviews of outputs, transactional reviews, and general computer controls. These are some of your high-level control procedures that we incorporate, especially in the finance department, to make sure that what we do gives good information for whoever needs you are.
You have like, sorry, on the general, I mean, I know this is more on the accounting and budget side, but general computer controls, for example, is there a policy that you have in place for the entire, RES, especially on the business side, where, you have to lock your computer when you walk away from your desk, and, just sending your personal, or sending documents from RES through unsecured email to your home email address, because it's easier to do.
It's not as detailed as it should be, but we do have the employee and computer-related policies. It's not that specific. Locking now.
That's a good question. Areas for consideration when implementing internal controls, do budgets and planning. This relates to cash, and this is primarily finance. Investments, revenues, receivables, capital assets, procurement payables, employee compensation, electronic data processing, financial reporting, and even transportation and maintenance. Those are all areas for consideration when implementing internal controls, which we're going to think about. We need to set those up. This right here, one of our internal controls, of course, is we have to have an audit done every year. You, as a board, approve our final audits from our auditors on an annual basis. This is the independent auditor's report. And what you're basically getting here is an unbiased third-party opinion of our finance environment. And that very bottom part where it says opinion, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of Responsive Education Solutions, and this is the most recent one, as of August 31st, 2016, and the changes in its net assets and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That's the opinion you're always getting at the end of these reports that you want to see. That's what you're going back to the other section we want to talk about, financial accounting standards. We want to talk about accounting records. The accounung rules that we follow are set forth by FASB and GASB. That's how we affectionately refer to them as. You look down the bottom what those stand for. There are general rules and concepts called GAAP as well that we follow. So down there at the bottom, that's what all those little acronyms stand for. FASB is the Financial Accounting Standards Board. GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And GAAP is Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. So we basically follow the rules set forth in all three. And there's a lot of overlap, but there's some nuances to each of those three that we have to follow. Quick backwards. Now here is, and this was one of the things that I got to learn really fast when I got here, is the difference between in accounting between nonprofit charters and ISDs. Most of y'all are probably very familiar with this, but it's really good learning for me when I first got here. Nonprofit charter is full accrual accounting versus modified accrual accounting on ISDs. When it comes to capital items, nonprofit charters record capital items on the balance sheets. ISDs expense capital items in government funds. Nonprofit charters record long-term debt on their balance sheets. And with ISDs, there is no long-term liability in government funds. And the key word of an ISDs is the in government funds. It doesn't mean they don't have them, but if you ever look at a balance sheet for an ISD, which I did, there is a separate column. There's a column for government funds in the balance sheet. There's a separate column for other business activities or something of that nature where those things are listed. So it's not that they don't have them, they just don't keep them under in government funds. A lot of ISDs, if I'm not mistaken, don't even capitalize some of their assets. They may keep records and track of them, but they don't necessarily capitalize them. Any questions on this? I'm sure y'all are probably well versed in this. This is just one of the things I thought was got here. System requirements. Accounting system, this is basically financial accounting system on our computers. Must include be able to handle fund accounting, encumbrance accounting, teams reporting, and management reports. So, of course, Skyward does all four, and then some. But those are the four fundamental things all accounting systems must do. This is a kind of a table of contents, if you will, from the FASREG that I mentioned a while ago, Financial Accounting Standards, Financial Accounting Standards, what is it? Resource Guide.
It'll come out in your sleep.
It will. It's on. You know, FASREG does come out in my sleep. What it stands for. I wanted to bring this up primarily because of the bottom section where the arrow is pointing. Modules 10 and 11 of the FASREG guide specifically relate to charter schools. So those two modules are almost kind of the Bible that we follow here at ResponsiveEd. That's how we do a lot of our finance. There are also special accounting and procedures that we have for campus activity funds, for grants and special programs, and for food service, child nutrition programs that require special accounting in place. Then we move into the federal law part of the TSCA, Module 100. Once again, Module 100 up there indicates where we are. Federal law, I won't go through this whole thing, but basically it sets out a lot of federal guidelines on how we do a lot of things. Primarily, if you ever heard of EDGAR, you probably heard that term thrown out a lot. EDGAR is the Education Department General Administration Regulation. And I'll go ahead and read that part. Adoption of new EDGAR, because it was updated in the last couple of years or so. Adoption of new EDGAR, it says charter holders/school grantees should consult the new Education Department General Administration Regulation, EDGAR, for the complete set of applicable federal regulations that were adopted on December 26, 2014. The new EDGAR will apply to all federal grants awarded directly to the charter school after that date and will apply to all state and ministry programs as of July 1st, 2015. So there was kind of a 6-month transition implementation time period that took place. Grants awarded before the effective dates will continue to be governed by the OMB circular that were in effect at the time. Our EDGAR policies have been and are being updated as we speak to make sure they fully comply with the December 2014 guidelines. There are also requirements related to the investment of state funds. The following provisions apply to charter schools unless alternative requirements have been submitted by the charter holder to the State Board of Education, have received approval from the SBOE, State Board of Education, and the Commissioner of Education has amended the charter contract to adopt the approved procedure. The first one is compliance. Charter holders shall invest state funds in accordance with Texas Government Code, SS 2256.0. You know how to read it, right?
Yeah.
Just, I'll read it wrong. 2256.1016. Number one, state funds invested shall be maintained in a discrete charter investment account, separate and distinct from the operating accounts for the charter school and separate and distinct from any investment accounts related to non-charter activities. Number two, investments will be made in accordance with any applicable provision or covenant contained in a debt instrument, bond, indenture, or similar agreement. Investment of state or federal grants is not authorized unless their investment is expressly authorized under the terms of the grant. Bank accounts. First of all, I get depository contracts. Depository contracts. State funds received by a charter holder must be deposited into a bank with which the charter holder has entered into a depository contract and which deposits are insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC. Depository bank. A depository bank is A, a bank, B, a savings and loan association, or a savings bank organized under the laws of Texas, another state or federal law that has its main branch office in Texas. Or the deposits exceeding the FDIC insured amounts need not be collateralized for the institution to constitute a bank for purposes of concession. Filing. The charter holder must file a copy of the depository contract with the Texas Education Agency, division responsible for school financial audits, no later than November 1st of each year. If there is no change since the previous year's filing, charter holder may file a statement to that effect instead of a copy of the depository contract.
So we have our deposits at North Star,
Correct.
right? And so each year you file a statement that nothing's changed or.
And then, yes, sir.
Well, we can talk more about it later, but North Star Bank has been
Purchased. Or they
purchased
merged.
by Independent Bank.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
so
And will the name of the bank change?
Yes.
they've started the transition. It has, they haven't changed the name outside of it, but
It'll change to
Internally,
the
when
McKinney Bank or whatever that.
I think it started in April.
Yeah, they said the actual name to change over the course of the summer. By fall, they should have it all changed to Independent.
Independent Bank. And Tony is taking a sort of a different job, but still involved.
they're going to use our $40 million deposits to change all the lines on the
It's
bill.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So speaking of that, we go into our cash management, not our cash management here at RES. Our depository bank is North Star, which is being changed as we speak to an independent bank. This primarily has to do with the campus level, just so you know, but it applies to us as well when you get these other three things. But when it comes to, you get cash, before you deposit it, there are certain goals we have in place to safeguard that cash, right? So you have a depository bank, but all cash must use authorized receipt books. The cash is kept in a locked, secure place, and all cash and other deposits should be made frequently. And those are just standard good operating procedure when it comes to not just money, cash, but any money you receive by check or whatever the case may be.
If you want to talk a little bit about the new system this last year, what was it? Where we collect from the parents that's not cash anymore. What's the system?
Mills Plus.
It's not
Mills Plus using
No,
ACH.
it's the-
The K-12 payment center.
Yeah.
There you go.
So we're trying to become more cashless to be more secure. and we take payments from parents that have after-school care, things like that, just to make it less likely that someone do something wrong with cash.
Can I ask, did you notice it was on the front page of the Dallas Morning News a few months ago that an employee at the Grand Prairie Public School, ISD, managed to steal, seemed like it was $6 or $7 million. Just unbelievable. Did you hear about that?
I did not, but it's just amazing.
Yes, I heard about it. I don't know if it was that much, but it was a lot.
Yeah, it was in the millions. And
Slowly over years.
the superintendent had been in one of my schools before. He got that job, and I think the employee was probably in more trouble with the superintendent than with the school board because that woman superintendent could be tough and vicious, but there hasn't ever been an explanation on how it happened. And
Unless one of the things that, and this just goes back to before I was even here, but when it comes to purchases and our requisite, and we'll get into this in a minute, and the way we purchase items around here and our encouraged way of doing it, the PO system, purchase order system, is it gives you a three-way match to make sure things are happening the way they should happen. Number one. Number two, there's always your due diligence on looking at vendors, addresses. Are there any addresses of vendors that may be the same as another address of another vendor? All these little things that you kind of have an eye for, that you look out for, any relationships that may exist between people in authority and vendors. Not that it's necessarily wrong. It's just an eyes wide open, live in sunshine type of mentality, I guess you'd say. But those are just things that I've always, even not in just this industry, other industries, that you're always looking for. And a lot of times, it's not what you're doing that gets you. You get greedy, and the amounts get big enough that it actually comes up on somebody's radar. And that's when.
Is it one of your responsibilities to try to check ever so often to make sure that all the cash is where it's supposed to be?
Absolutely. Buck stops here.
One of the things too that we encourage our staff and accounting to do is if they see an invoice that may not look right or whatever, they have the ability to contact that vendor. And if it looks like somebody just drafted some invoice that doesn't look like it's maybe legitimate, they have the ability to contact that vendor and verify did they really get the work.
And once again, the three-way match of the PO system. Here we go. Purchasing. So the things that are required when it comes to purchasing are that you get quotes or you get bids. You can work through purchasing cooperatives, which I think we do with our Staples contract, if I'm not mistaken. What a purchasing cooperative, without getting into a lot of detail, basically lets you do is it lets you piggyback on other group efforts. We can have states like Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas can get together and get a contract with Staples. And then Oklahoma can say, "Oh, we won into that deal." So you can kind of piggyback on another a deal that other people are involved in, called purchasing cooperatives. And of course, you have state contracts with purchasing. Purchasing has to go through certain approval levels, a tiered approval level, which is basically a lot of our board members don't know this, but whenever something is purchased, depending on what department it's purchased for, depending on the dollar amount, can determine what approval levels it has to go through to get purchased. There are tiered thresholds for how the purchase is procured. And all purchases should start with issuance of a purchase order. And that's really the key, and that's what we really encourage and kind of expect all of our purchases to do, or go through the purchase order system. And the reason is because really we have what's called a three-way match when it comes to purchase orders. What happens is you create a purchase order which authorizes the purchase of something, this table. And what happens is when they deliver the table, you have a packing slip / proof of delivery that we sign off on that proves that we received it. And then the third part of the match is when we get the invoice, it matches the price and quantity that we authorized to purchase and that we said we received. So if all of your purchases go through this course of events, that's a really good levels of security for what you're spending the money on. Not all of our purchases are done through the PO system. We encourage and expect and promote the use of the PO system as much as possible. However, there are disbursements of funds that are done other ways, one of which is a check request. And usually those are done for the one-off things or for quick turnaround things, for fees and licenses. Actually, our utilities we've got on our PO system, actually at this point, we're using blanket POs. Because although your utilities fluctuate from month to month, you can do a blanket PO and kind of adjust that throughout the year, but at least you're not losing sight of your utility bills and getting paid. But usually it's for your little one-off things that you need to pay. Oh, we need to send some kind of registration fee for something. Go do a check request. Those systems through the PO system.
Are all principals granted a certain amount of authority to spend money without having to go beyond?
And that's spelled out in the fiscal policy.
There's also credit cards. We have certain individuals who have company credit cards that they can to make purchases with. That's primarily probably, I would say 95% plus of those expenditures related to travel, to be honest with you, when they're on the road. And then last but not least, there are travel and employee reimbursements, and those are just expense reimbursements that we get from time to time where people spend their own money out of their pocket, submit the expense report to us, get coded, we reimburse them. So, but we like as much as possible for all of our disbursements to go through the purchase orders system, primarily for that three-way match to make safeguards in place. But not everything can be done that way. Public property, ownership of public property. Public property held in trust. An interest in real estate or personal property acquired, improved, or maintained using state funds that were received by the charter holder on or after September 1st, 2001 is public property for all purposes under state law. So basically, even though we purchased property, we are still beholden to the state laws and regulations as far as how that property is used. Almost it's not really yours because you use public funds to purchase it. So there's still that fiduciary responsibility, I guess is a good way of putting it, that we are held to when it comes to public property that we purchase.
And do they have special powers to take that property from us without due process? Or
No,
they would still have to follow the...
They have rules that are for a former charter holder versus a current charter holder. If it's a former charter holder, they have all that discretion of just taking stuff at will, basically, because you've already been closed. But as long as you're current, there's, Chris, you can speak to this, but as long as you're current, it kind of changes that whole dynamic.
Yeah, practically speaking, as long as you're operating charter, you wouldn't see any difference between in this property ownership aspect of it. Only once you dissolve as a charter, they close you down, you're a forward charter, they come in and say they have an interest in this property, they have these rules on how they can dissolve that.
So if they had a lien right, say, or you owed the state money, that could be an asset they could more easily take back from.
Yeah, and there's some weakness from the state standpoint, and so they're trying to actually change. They have bills out there right now trying to change some of the aspect where the state has an easier time getting the property of a former charter owner.
Okay, but the issue is more for former, which means that, as a board, we wouldn't exist at that point. So,
right, the state would deal with it internally.
Okay. Number two, just as cursory, special rules apply to property acquired before September 1st, 2000. Number three, public property is held by the charter holder in trust for the benefit of the students of the charter school. The members of the governing body of the charter holder and charter school, as well as officers of the charter school, are trustees, and each is held to the standard of care and fiduciary duties that a trustee owes the beneficiary of a trust under Texas law. Students enrolled in the charter school are beneficiaries.
Sorry,
Okay.
I just didn't dawn on me that the students were the beneficiaries. They contract with
Capital assets, we have an internal capital assets policies and procedures how we identify our capital assets. And so the next 3 slides are cut and pasted right out of our fiscal asset policy, our capital asset policy. Purpose of capital asset, the purpose is to set policy on the capitalization threshold for the purpose of classifying capital assets. Authority is given by Texas Education Agency Financial Accountability System Resource Guide, FASREG 1.2.4, capital assets, and GASB 42. Definition of capital assets. Capital assets for responsive education solutions are any single item with a unit price of $5,000 or more. Now, that does not mean that if we spend $5,000 or more on something that is automatically a capital asset. That just means that if it's going to be a capital asset, it has to have been at least $5,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It has to be tangible in nature. Has to be long-lived. Otherwise, have a life of longer than 1 year. Examples of such assets include, land, improvements to buildings, or improvements to land, buildings, improvements to buildings, equipment, infrastructure, purchase furniture, this falls into that. Computer equipment, it falls into the equipment part. It has to be of a significant value at purchase or acquisition time, and reasonably identified and controlled through a physical inventory system. Capital assets acquired by Responsive Education Solutions will be recorded at the total cost to the company to place the asset in service. The cost should include ancillary charges necessary to place the asset into its intended location and condition for use. Installation. You buy a bunch of computers, you need to install them. The installation costs associated with that equipment, it's kind of bundled with that equipment. You capitalize it. That's what that. Ancillary costs, there you go, include costs that are directly attributable to asset acquisition, such as freight, transportation charges, insurance on the equipment, while in transit, assembling and installation costs, site preparation costs, and professional fees. If the capital assets are acquired by gift, then the appraised value on the date received is the appropriate amount to include in the capital asset records of the corporation. So basically, gifts have to be appraised, fair market value.
But only if it's 5,000.
Only if it's over 5. Exactly. Still has to meet that threshold. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it says it on the next page. Sorry.
Capital assets may be acquired by several methods, such as purchase, lease purchase, construction, work in progress, or gifts. An individual unit. If the cost of equipment and/or furniture is $5,000 or more, and the useful life criteria are estimated at more than 1 year, the purchase shall be considered a capital asset. Group purchases, such as computers, classroom furniture and equipment, library books, that may not meet the monetary threshold of $5,000 on an individual basis, but collectively they would, may be capitalized under a major replacement or equipping program in the CEO's approval. Especially when you open a new campus. You're going to buy a lot of things that individually or in the normal course of business you might expense, but in opening a new campus, you buy, you outfit your library with books. To this example, those could be capitalized as a equipping program, I should say. That you would ongoing, if you replace a book, it's not capitalized, but those initial purchases could be grouped together and capitalized. Gifts or donations totaling more than $5,000 shall be recorded as a capital asset at their estimated fair market value at the time of receipt. So the gifts still have to be $5,000. Classifications of capital assets. Proper classifications of individual capital assets are required for accounting and financial statement presentation purposes. These classifications will include the cost of the item and all associated charges. Different types of asset classifications are real property, typically determined by appraisal, land improvements, the cost of buildings and improvements, construction costs, infrastructure, furniture and equipment, determined by the amount paid to purchase these items, desks, chairs, other furniture and equipment, computers, and printers. We don't necessarily have all of our assets broken out this many items. We primarily have land, building and improvements, I think furniture and equipment, I think library and media is one of them. So I think those are our 4 primary. We also have construction in progress that will eventually roll into a fixed asset, i.e. the building or something, but it's not in and of itself a fixed asset as part of that accounts. We don't use all of those. We have to buy some for efficiency. Additions and betterments. Costs related to capital assets after their acquisition that increases the value or physical properties of the asset should be capitalized at cost when acquired or when construction or installation is complete. Maintenance costs intended to keep the asset in its operating condition are not to be capitalized. One of my favorite examples is parking lots. If you build a new parking lot, it can be capitalized. If you repair a parking lot, it is not capitalized. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
However, there's that gray area of, well, if the repair was actually an enhancement that lengthened the life of the parking lot, well, then you can have a discussion of capitalizing. Not to get that down to the weeds, those are just kind of the examples of where these things come into play that we have fun with in our accounting.
Before you, I think the lunch is here, so why don't we, before we go to the next item, are you ready? Is lunch ready?
They're ready, yep.
Why don't we stop here and we'll pick up,
Yeah, they can't-
after everybody
they-
gets
they're
their
throwing
food, we'll
things
pick
back.
up. Yeah,
It's a knockdown, drag out.
whatever rounds you want.
Well, don't miss anything. I ate too much of the food.
At least you're honest.
Corey forgot to tell you there will be a test at the end of the presentation.
That's right. To get your training credit hours, you have to pass the test.
All right, we can do that. Is it a take-home test?
Oh, it's a 1-question test. Who presented today?
You're good to go.
We're good.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, use of public property. A charter holder / school may use public property only for a purpose for which a school district may use school district property and only to implement a program that is described in the open enrollment charter and is consistent with the Texas Education Code 12.102. Any use of public property that is inconsistent with this section constitutes misuse and misapplication of such property and is subject to Texas law governing misuse or misapplication of property. So don't do it. All right, payroll functions. Just a refresher for those of you who don't know, we pay every 2 weeks, and almost all of our employees, not quite all, but almost 100% of our employees are on direct deposit, basically ACH deposit.
And how long are you going to permit the ones that aren't on direct deposit to continue to receive a check?
I don't think you can force them. If I'm not mistaken, you can't force people.
Yeah, first would be direct deposit, but we can put it on a pay card.
Right.
So we can go to direct deposit or a pay
It's a
card.
direct deposit onto a pay card, but there's no check.
But no, yeah, without check.
You can go to check.
Right, and so we actually issued a policy to require folks to use one or the other. There were a very small number of, I don't know, holdouts, but folks who have had issues with either getting their pay card set up or direct deposit. But we do have several employees who do not have a bank account. But we drove that very heavily and got very close to.
That's why I put almost 100% because we are close.
Yeah, it's good. It's just so much cheaper.
It is. It's more efficient. Chances less chance for issues. Benefits that we have include health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, and vision. Responsive Ed pays into the teacher retirement system and into Medicare. Annual audits. The annual audit by the charter. A charter holder shall, at its own expense, have the financial and programmatic operations of its charter schools audited annually by a certified public accountant, licensed by the Texas State Board of Public Accounting and registered as a provider of public accounting services. Earlier in the slide, I showed you our letter that we get from the auditors at the completion of each audit, basically their opinion stating that everything's in good order. And that's why we do that, so we have that third-party objective opinion that we can give back to the charter holder shall file a copy of the annual audit report approved by the governing body of the charter holder with the TEA division responsible for school financial audits no later than 150th day after the end of the fiscal year for which the audit was made. So basically 5 months. 5 months at the end of your fiscal year, approximately 150 days is not quite 5 months, but approximately 5 months after the fiscal year. We have to file a copy of that audit report. The audit must comply with generally accepted accounting standards and must include an audit of the accuracy of the fiscal information provided by the charter school through the Public Education Information Management System. Financial statements in the audit must comply with government auditing standards and the Office of Management and Budget Circular A-133 or its successor. Budgeting. Oh, here we go. And the reasons we're here, right? The annual operating budget process is the charter schools must adopt a budgeting process that's consistent with the requirements of the budgeting module of the Texas Education Agency's Financial Accountability System Resource Guide. That's right. The governing board, is you, must formally adopt the budget before the fiscal year begins and before the expenditure of funds. It must include all expenses and must be prepared in a manner consistent with the account code structure used by the charter school. The adoption of the budget and any amendments must be recorded in the minutes of the governing board. The minutes must include a description of the action taken by the board and a copy of the budget and or amendments adopted. The governing body of a charter school must formally adopt amendments to the charter school budget. I think you all are very familiar with that process. Importance of budgets. Budgeting is a valuable tool in planning and evaluation. Budgeting provides a vehicle for translating educational goals and programs into financial resources. It also provides the authorization for expenditures for the year, as well as key internal controls. So planning, accountability, all those kind of things, that's kind of, the budget kind of puts that out there to begin with. Of course, we have amendments throughout the year, but it's a tool that we use to make all of our financial decisions throughout the fiscal year. Part of the budgeting process is budgeting for revenues. Revenues come from various sources. Three, primarily, there's local revenue, state revenue, and federal revenue. Local revenue includes things such as entrance fees, interest, donations. State revenue would be foundation school program, as well as instructional materials or instructional material allotment. Federal revenue would be things that come from federal programs and grants, which would also include the nutrition programs.
One of our other local revenue things is there is after school care that which we'll see. I think we get about 600,000.
So that's about right.
Between the two.
Yes, sir.
So, and then it's 300,000 of expenses. So
This is the summary of finances. This is the one for Texas College Preparatory Academies for PCA. This slide and the next slide are basically the primary drivers of our revenue for our budget process. This gets updated. How many times a year does this get updated? At least 24, yeah.
Monthly.
I mean, at least once a month, if not twice a month. So this is an ever-changing document that we use to then rely upon to kind of let us know where we stand based on our latest ADA information, what our revenue will be. And this is the primary driver of most of our revenue.
Which most of it comes from the 6-week attendance report.
Yes, sir.
It is reported every 6 weeks.
So this is our current, February 10th, 2017. Federal revenues can be broken down into primary 3 sub-object areas, titles 1, 2, and 3. Federal revenues, student nutrition, C&P or federal student lunch program, and IDOB, which is special education. Those are your 3 primary drivers of federal revenues. Expenditures in a budget. The estimates are generally the shared responsibility of administrators and other personnel. And there are 5 groups of expenditure that we budget our expenses off of. Payroll, which are your 6,100 accounts. And this is not at the function level, by the way. This is at the accounting object level, just FYI. The budgets that we adopt are at the function level, but these are the different categories which are at the object level that we have our expenses in. Payroll, 6,100s. Contract services are the 6,200s. Supplies are your 6,300s. Other operating costs are your 6,500s, and then debt costs are operating costs are 6,400s. Debt costs are 6,500. I do believe, tell me if I'm wrong, Joseph, even though we present and approve the budget at the function level, we do have our budget also in here at the object level. Correct. That we'll have it broken down this way too. So you'll see it that way. Annual budgets for responsive education solutions and both Texas charters are summarized by function, as I mentioned, and presented to the board for adoption, which is what we'll be doing for our Texas charters here shortly after this, after my presentation. This goes into the functional areas of our budget, and this is the way it is set up. It has to be approved by the board and submitted to the state. There are numerous functional areas on our financial statements. The ones I have on the next couple of slides are the ones that we utilize. There are other function areas that we don't, but these are the ones that we do utilize. I have broken down into primary categories. The first one is the category of instruction. Functions 11, 12, and 13 fall under that. And they are instruction, instructional resources, and curriculum development. All fall under those 3 functions fall under the instruction category. The next category is instructional support, which are functions 21, 23, 31, 32, 33, and 36, which are instructional leadership, school leadership, guidance, counseling, and evaluation, social work services, health services, and 36 is extracurricular activities. Those all fall under instructional support. Next primary category is central administration, which for us is made up of function 41, which is general administration. Next is district operations. Functions under that one include student transportation, food services, facilities maintenance and operation, security and monitoring services, and data processing services. Recently, we did have function 63, didn't we? Or was that department? Those departments. I'm sorry, department. Department 53. That fall in line with function. Last category is debt service, which is function 71, and all debt service falls into that function. Last is other. Other functional areas that we utilize are these four: 61, community services; 81, fundraising; 82, facilities acquisition and construction; and 99 is undistributed. Budget maintenance and amendments. Throughout the fiscal year, the budget must be monitored, maintained, and adjusted as necessary. The budget should be adjusted before exceeding the functional expenditure category. All functional level budget amendments and flat transfers are required to be adopted by the last day of the fiscal year. Many budget reports are available after P's fall submission. Cash flow projection. In order to project an accurate cash flow, gather data regarding revenues and expenditures for each month or several years. Basically gives you good historical perspective on how our cash flows cycle tends to go. We don't always make the exact same amount of money every month. So to have just a flat cash flow, well, it's $100,000 for the year or $120,000 for the year, and that's $10,000 every month. Well, that's not exactly how it works. So what we do is we gather the data over several years, if possible, to get you a historical perspective of how our cash flow varies throughout the year, so that as we're setting up budgets, we can project accordingly. Put the information in a spreadsheet, determine when extra funds are available and when more funds are needed than is received during a given month. That goes back to that volatility of money coming in versus money going out. Traditionally, correct me if I'm wrong, James and Joseph, but we incur a larger portion of our expenses in the last 2 quarters, especially the fourth quarter of our fiscal years, as we're ramping up for the next school year. Hence the discussion on fiscal year change when all those expenses are really for the next school year, between the next fiscal year that we're expending in the previous year. So once again, the fiscal year change is really going to help from an accounting standpoint, matching what we're spending and when we're spending it for. It'd be the same fiscal year. Charter first. DEC section 12.115 provides for the revocation of charters that fail to meet academic or financial accountability. Currently, it's called the 3-strike school. The commissioner will revoke charter if the charter receives an academic rating of improvement required, or charter receives some substandard achievement through charter first for the 3 preceding years or any combination thereof. Current system. This is just kind of a snapshot. It shows the different categories that are measured when getting the accountability rating. And right now, you get 1 of 2 ratings: met standard or improvement required. Categories that are looked at are student achievement, with STAR test scores for the year, student progress, progress in subjects from year to year, closing performance gaps, with an emphasis on high-level achievement of lowest performing students, and post-secondary readiness, graduation rates, diploma plans, college and career readiness standards. This came from the PEA website. I thought it was informative, kind of give a visual idea of kind of what the categories are that the ratings are based on. Next thing I want to show is financial accountability. The state's financial accountability rating system, known as this is what FIRST stands for, Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. That's what FIRST is. It has 3 indicators: critical, solvency, financial competency. Now this is the new, I guess it's the A to F, that I think that starts this September, correct? or this coming year, is that right? And the new system, as I said, it's the A through F system, and the ratings are determined based upon the applicable number of points. And what you see here, kind of what your point spreads are for each rating. A, which equals superior, is 70 through 100. B, which is above standard, 50 through 69. C equals meet standard, 31 through 49. And F equals substandard achievement, which is 0 through 30. Those are the details behind all those different points and how they're measured. We're getting familiar with, I'm assuming. I would say I'm not totally up to speed on that, but I'm sure Chuck and Robert are a lot more speed on that.
Well, it's not all decided either.
It's not. Yeah, it's true. It's not. It's not.
It's influence.
We worked out before next, where they actually rate us for a 17, 18.
So last year they did a 100-point system, and we ranked we were 96 points in one of our charters. But we were right in that. We would have been in the superior category. Now they're making changes kind of like that. We got to play out, but it just didn't.
Record retention, records management. Governing bodies shall establish, promote, support an active continuing program for the efficient and economical management of all school records. Develop policies and procedures for the administration of the program under the director of the records management officer. Facilitate the creation and maintenance of records containing adequate documentation of the organization, functions, policies, decisions, procedures, and essential transactions of the school, and designed to furnish the information necessary to protect the legal and financial rights of the school, state, and persons affected by the activities of the school. Everybody get that part? I have to read it. I have to read that 2 or 3 times to catch it. D, facilitate the identification and preservation of records that are of permanent value. E, facilitate the identification and protection of essential records. And F, cooperate with the Commission in its conduct of statewide records management surveys. G, designate records management officer. Designate a records management officer by designating an individual or designating an office or position, the holder of which shall be the record management officer. And it got cut off. PEIMS, which is the Public Education Information Management System. All familiar with that. The following information is submitted into PEIMS each year. One thing I did want to say about our record retention policy, for the most part in finance, we're for the most part paperless. That's the direction we're trying to go, is so that we don't have file rooms just full of stuff. For the most part, we're moving forward with a paperless record retention. I think it's pretty much across the company.
We actually have a agreement with the state, sign on, say, maintain the copy. So it's part of our.
The following information is submitted into PEIMS each year: organizational information, budget information, financial, staff information, student demographic information, program participation, school leaver, student attendance, course completion, and discipline. All the PEIMS information are used for reports, state and federal compliance, other districts, partner first, etc. So basically, what you submit to PEIMS is the information used that drives all of our reporting requirements, accountabilities, standards that we have to meet. Pretty much all derived from whatever we report through PEIMS. PEIMS data quality. One of the steps we go through, especially with the finance department, are we prepare preliminary reports, review special populations, review the reasonableness, the unusual populations, high or low number of special populations, missing special populations, ADA versus enrollment, current year versus prior year, et cetera. Scrub the data, make sure it's correct. We make certain what we call crosswalk formulas outside of our system to conform to the team's data requirements and how it has to be reported. So there are numerous steps and numerous people looking at the data to make sure it's correct, that the errors are addressed. Fatal errors have to be enforced. Things like that. So it's a very deliberate, robust process to get your data ready to be presented to the system. Most all activities in a charter school affect inequality. And last slide is, where can you find assistance? And these are three of the places I go every time I have questions outside of the organization. Texas Education Agency, which I have a direct link on my computer and a direct link to the FASREG. Because if you ever really want something to read, you're having trouble sleeping, go to that. But in all honesty, it is a wealth of information, and there is a lot there. And I could do this for 20 years and probably not know everything that's in there, especially because it probably changes every once in a while too. It's updated and mentored and everything else. Educational service centers, we are in 11, right? Region 11.
One charter is 11.
Yes, I attended one over in 10, over in White Settlement last month. It went over.
It's the best service center in the state, and it has the best board chair.
Which one?
Regional
11? That's what I heard too. And that's located right down here at Coy.
No.
Where is it?
It's
region.
it's
Can you make a motion
That's
to
not-
fire the
White
CEO
Settlement.
of ResponsiveEd?
Okay, which one? Which one's 10? Or we're in which one? We're in 11. Okay,
Which is in Fort Worth, which is
that's
didn't
right.
think I
That's
was
the one that's in
paying
11. Region 10 is the one that's down here over.
it's no good.
It's no good, right?
Region 10 is the region.
That's why I drove an hour and a half to White Settlement. Instead of 3 minutes.
Remove the sign.
The JV is board president.
I did.
Could you say tied for the best at least?
I do have a question. I went to that little conference or whatever it was, training session about a month ago, and they had a presentation. We did not get copies of that presentation. Did they post that on the website, or is there a way to get a copy of that?
I'll get you one.
All right. We'll talk after. Meaning, because there was some really good information on there that I really enjoyed getting into. And of course, our auditors. We always can call our auditors because they are exposed to and have experienced a lot of different areas and can walk through us a lot of scenarios about things that may happen on a financial nature, not just financial, but internal controls, policies, and procedures. That was one of my first phone calls when we got ready to do our fiscal year change. You know, what does this mean? What does this mean on an abbreviated year? What does the process look like? And we're going to talk just about that. Just to go back to the fiscal year change real fast, you know, although it's not happening until next year, TEA requirement is that you submit your application to change it a year out. So it has to be submitted by June 30th of this year to be able to be done by June 30th. So that was one of the things we found out in researching. So those are three really valuable areas of assistance and a resource for all of us, especially for me right now. Other than that, that is the last slide. Are there any questions anybody has? Like I said, this was a great exercise for me in putting this together because it just continues my knowledge and learning this industry. So I look forward to hopefully getting to do some more of these things in the future because it will facilitate my learning.
Good job, Corey.
Good job. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So, what we've been talking about for the last hour and a half is the why we do what we do in the financial area. So we want to transition now into the how and what process we went through over the last 4 months, let's say, as we started developing the budget. As you guys know, we made a transition with James has moved over to RSSI. I've become more involved over the last 4 or 5 months with the finance division, being in some of the meetings, assisting with interviewing staff as we are looking at some additional staff to help Corey over there, things like that. And so I've been getting more involved. We've had, I would say, probably 4 or 5 meetings, pretty extensive meetings where we've had the opportunity to kind of go through the budget in quite a lot of detail. Probably more so this year than we had in the last couple of years, just because we wanted to have an opportunity to look at formulas and fixed costs and how were the formulas working, which a lot of our formulas have been working for many years the way we set them up. But we wanted to take some more extensive time to go through all that and make sure that we had some opportunity to change some things this year. So we had quite a few extensive meetings, day-long meetings, where we sat and went through all the details. So there is one person who is across the table over here, Joseph, is we get to sit in the meetings and say, wow, we'd love to take this and do that and do this and do that. And there's got to be somebody that actually takes all of those notes and actually makes it all happen. And that's Joseph. He spent an extensive amount of time taking all those notes and action items from the meeting and figuring out, okay, if we're going to move this and move that and shift this and shift that and look at this expense and actuals over here and those kind of things, he's been the guy that's been working on those details. So we wanted to give him a few minutes and, maybe 15, 20 minutes or whatever you would like to take, Joseph, just to kind of go through some of the things that you've done. We did talk a little bit about functions and object codes in here, and we're going to look at the budget after Joseph has kind of an opportunity of some of the things, just to tell you a little bit about kind of how he did what he did. So we're going to give you however long you need, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, and just kind of talk about some of what you've done. If you want to show anything, that's up to you. If you want to pull up any documents or anything, that's we can do that as well. And then after that, we'll go into the actual budget document, and we'll look at some of the big picture items and some things we've included in the budget after that. So, Joseph?
Joseph, before you do that, for those of you who don't have a suit coat on, how's the temperature?
Oh, it's great.
It's perfect.
Oh my goodness. Are you cold? Now the board president saying it was great. Okay, perfect.
There must be some blankets somewhere.
There's a jacket over here.
Is it okay that my hands are turning blue?
This particular room is colder.
I mean, I'm okay. If you want to get yourself more comfortable and have to get warm here, that's fine. I mean, besides Marvin and Sarah, is anyone else cold? He doesn't
get
count.
away from the Arctic curtain over there.
This is Chris, who keeps a heater in his office by his
Even during the
desk.
summer,
In the summer.
because that guy has control of the
Okay, it's out of control. Joseph.
All right, enough of that for a while.
Bring it back.
Yeah,
Sorry,
all
Joseph.
right.
We're back. Focus here.
So every year when we start the budgeting process, the primary driver of our budget is the expected number of students that we're going to be serving on any given campus. ADA is a primary driver for every single one of our budgets. Our board budget starts when Robert and his operations team provides us with the expected number of students we're going to serve on any given campus for the upcoming fiscal year. Once we get the number of students, then we have a formula budget that we've developed. And I left this slide up here on the screen in particular because we've got a formula budget that drives each of our campuses so that we are allocating sufficient amount of resources to each of our campuses so they can sustain operations for that year.
And everything, the key number is the ADA?
The key number is ADA. That's exactly right.
It drives a lot of the formulas. If it's
Because
not,
one
if it's not a
Expense
fixed
increases
cost.
and
That's exactly right. One, it's going to tell us how much revenue we're expecting to generate for each of our organizations or each of our campuses. And then within that revenue, we build the expenditure model that we know that we need to be able to run that school and run it well.
How often do you reforecast?
We reforecast every 6 weeks throughout the year. Our operating budget is revised every 6 weeks based on the PEMS ADA.
Okay.
And we just finished doing the fifth 6 weeks, and at the end of the year, we'll do the sixth 6 weeks, and that drives a component of our incentive plan, or our merit-based incentive for all of our campuses.
And that's, I would assume you'd have to do it more frequently than I do. I do mine every 3 months.
Yeah.
But you know, mine's definitely a little bit more fixed. And yeah. Okay.
And so, you know, depending on the model, some of our ADA is more fluid than not. You know, our enrollment in some of our premier high schools fluctuates more throughout the year than our non. But for each of our brands, we also have a student-teacher ratio that we budget to so that we can allocate full-time equivalent teachers per campus. And each brand requires a different amount of teachers based on the type of instructional services that we're providing. And so that's the basis of the formula. Of the way that we build each of our campus budgets.
Okay. And do you have a goal based on each of those brands? You know, what's your kind of cap per student per teacher ratio, or do you not so much focus on that in a budget process? Is it 15 students per teacher? Is it 20? And then you start looking, okay, we need more teachers. What's that kind of trigger?
We have that, if you remember back when we did the 6-year plan, on the 6-year plan.
I just remember like $2 or $3 billion
Yeah.
sticking out at me.
Can you remember page 3 of the 6-year plan? We spent a lot of time going through how many kids we needed to have per, you know, and teachers per grade levels, you know, which we've also used, which we're going to be coming back at the July meeting to talk about our staffing and how we're going to do staffing. But yes, we do have drivers. And you can elaborate on that too. But drivers, because it's a different ratio based on grade levels and brands. So different brands and different grade levels. So, you know, kindergarten may only have an 18 and 20 to 1, where a high school or upper middle school might have a 26 to 1, you know, student teacher ratio. So and then the premiers run at I believe it's a 40 to 1.
We changed this year to 30 to 1.
30 to 1, because we used to be 40 to 1 and an A, but now it's 30 to 1. Yeah. So yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. But do you want to elaborate any on that?
Yeah, depending on the grades we serve, we scale that back. And then we look at it every year to make sure that the number of teachers we're allocating to that campus based on the number of students we serve is adequate for the operation. And then once the budget's built, we make sure that we budget by exception from that point to see if there are additional resources that any given campus needs based on the facilities that they're operating in or the special populations that we expect them to serve, so that all of the
Okay. I'm going to word this, you correct the wording, but how many people, is this your team that does this? With the budget part of it, and how many people are on it to do this every 6 weeks and to reforecast? And
I've got a team, myself and 2 full-time staff members, and we report to do that forecast.
And do you report to Corey, or is it separate?
I report to Corey, yes.
Okay. Is he okay so far?
Oh yeah, he's catching on really quick. I mean, like we were talking about the different acronyms that he has to learn. He's catching on.
Yeah, where I come from, ADA stands for American Disabilities Act.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
You know,
Which is one of those things that we're in trouble with the Justice Department on.
HSA, high school department, or health savings account. So
Exactly.
you know, as we got on. So, but yeah, a lot of the tools I inherited from James, and we've taken the tools that James brought over, adapted them for the operational needs that we have in the organization, and continue to be in use.
So there's definitely some value for having a technology guy run finance, because they bring tools with them and
That's exactly
make it
right.
more automated.
That's
and
exactly right.
It's worked very well.
I mean, the other half, the better half of my team, you know, has a background in data management.
and actually, just to say, Joseph came in his background is coming from schools,
Mhm.
knowing the process.
When I first met him,
He's
he was you were responsible for a campus.
Yeah, that's correct.
He's actually running our systems administration, our financial systems administration. And he's in charge of the budget is just because of the nature of the manner in which we develop our budgets. And obviously his finance and operational understanding goes along with it. And to apply that to development.
Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. I'm a budget geek.
We're getting a lot more with Skyward now. He helps us with a lot of reporting. You know, if we break things down by reports. We've got so much more ease of access to data now. I was just downloading some title funds yesterday, and was able to run a report that actually tied out to what Marlene brought to my office, and it actually was exactly the same. So I appreciate that. But the report, he does a lot of the reporting stuff. So I call him up and say, hey, I need to know this department, and I need to look at it this way, either as a big picture, or I need to break it down. He can set those reports up, and he can also set them up to get some of the reports we actually get automated on an automated basis, so they come to us every month for certain things. So it's those kind of things is what his area covers.
In the reports, do you have them broken down into dashboards that give the view, or are they very detailed that people have to kind of know how to dig through them?
They have both, but there's not a dashboard capability in Skyward software itself.
We purchased Tableau, and we're going that.
We use
Everything will
Tableau.
be in Tableau. We do a lot with academics on Tableau. We're a little behind on the finance side, but we have the capabilities, and we're putting that pristine.
Just prior to moving into Skyward, we got the Tableau training, and then we moved into Skyward, and Skyward conversion took about 18 months, but now we're there.
Well, that's good. I mean, I like dashboards with the ability to drill down from there. I had to hire an engineer to figure it all out.
Yes. Yeah, so we're moving that direction.
So when you move away from personnel is a main component of our budget. And depending on the unit, anywhere from 50 to 70% of that budget is composed of payroll. When we move away from payroll, we've got two different other types of costs that we budget for. We've got our fixed expenses and our variable expenses. The fixed expenses are going to be our facilities costs, where we have a multi-year contract. Our utilities costs, even though they're going to be variable, they're going to be pretty steady each year. And then we have our variable costs, the costs that are going to change based on the number of students that we serve. And so our formula template allows us to project how much we're going to spend on a per student basis on any given campus based on the ADA we expect to have. And so the types of expenses that are variable are going to be health services, curriculum, testing materials, different instructional supplies, office supplies.
Does it go up based on your ADA?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So when we start at that ADA basis, we're then able to project what our expected expenses are going to be. And, we change those allocations year to year as the expenses increase or decrease in any of those given areas, but we have a good idea about what our expected costs are. And one of the things that we got in Skyward as part of the conversion process was a 5-year budget to actual history that we can draw upon when we're forecasting what our next year's budget is going to be. And
what would be some examples of fixed costs?
Like I was talking about the facilities cost, that's going to be fixed because we know going into the year how much we are required to either pay for a lease or what our bond interest expense is going to be for campus.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you make the utilities it's more on the fixed side.
Yeah.
You kind of, and do you have some reporting trigger that if there's an anomaly month over month in any of that? So typically I spend $150 on electricity during non-summer months, but if I get a bill for $250 in December, I start to freak out.
That's right.
Do you have something like that?
What we're budgeting to is the prior year actuals, and that's the fixed cost that we have for our utilities.
We're not going to catch it month to month right
Yeah.
You're not going to worry about it.
Just do worry about it, but we're not going to catch it. We're going to have to deal with the electric company probably 3 months, 4 months.
Or down the road. Okay.
Once a year, we do a utilities
figure for you then.
evaluation, which we just got through looking at. I've got a report on my desk where we kind of broke it down by like internet services for every campus, so that I can see is there something that's. We had I think a telephone situation that came up this last year where it was outrageously high. So we're able to
You're
catch
getting
that.
into that level of detail?
Well, sometimes.
You didn't get
I mean,
caught, so.
I look to see, once a year, not every.
Okay, good.
It's a once a year evaluation, so I can look at it to see, you know, down the line, what are things looking like they're consistent across the board. So,
And the
see
reports,
if there's something that's outrageous.
and the reports that we built, we looked at a 5-year history of utilities per campus, and we looked at, you know, what was the per ADA cost per campus, so that again, we can look at those variations. So,
Well, that's good. Yeah, at some point, I mean, I just wonder if there's some reporting you could get that's just more immediate, that there's, you know, if there's a 10% variance, 15, whatever you guys figure that out to be, but, you know, an indicator that will tell you. And you have an analyst or somebody on your team go back and look at it.
That's what Ken is moving more into, is analyzing the data. As far as the software, Skyward doesn't do that.
But as we get some more accurate time reporting on monthly, it won't be 3 or 4 months before you look into our data reports. We have analysis in place to look at that monthly as well. So that's pretty real time.
Well, because incentives are part of incentives are built around budgets for the campuses. The campus director should catch up as they get their reports. I should see that variance.
Okay, sorry.
Good points, good question.
yeah, so you know, beyond going into much more than that, that's how we build our budget. And while we're building that budget, it's building it at the object level and it's building it at the function level. And once we get to a point where we like the inputs, we like the ADA, we like the fixed costs, then we do the year-over-year testing to see whether or not the projected budget we're going to bring in front of the board meets some of the criteria about whether or not it's going to the historical function threshold or the object level threshold. Look at it to see, you know, what is the variance from year over year based on our projected budget compared to our actual year-over-year expenditures. And that was a lot of what we did in our budget meetings. Is we took our 17-18 budget and we normalized it for the 15-16 AD. And we looked at, you know, how did it look object by object or function by function when we normalized it for that 15-16 actual ADA numbers. And then once we got to a level of comfort there that the formulas hadn't changed significantly, that the fixed costs hadn't risen beyond the level where we would have surplus budgets, and made sure that the ADA allocations were reasonable based on our prior year expenses, then we really got into the point where we were at a budget that we bring in front of the board today. So
It's good.
All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
All right, thank you. All right.
Well, the reason I was asking so many questions is
Yeah.
expense management is, you know, very critical in making sure that you maintain the resources that you need to actually spend to make it better.
And you know, in responsive ed, we've got 75 different, you know, budget units at the campus level, and then another 20 at the department level. So it's a complex budget that we
A lot of
manage,
data and a
on
lot
a
of
given
data
day.
points anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
All right, okay, if we could turn now to this bound budget document, we're going to turn to that and we're going to kind of go through quickly here an overview. If you'll turn to the first tab, it's 2017-18 kind of overview. What is actually in the budget, and then we're going to look at the actual numbers, and then we'll get into the function of what the board actually approves. So if you look at looking at page 1 on the budget overview, what are we projecting in the budget this year for growth? What are our administrative expectations? Where do we believe we're going to be? So we believe this upcoming school year 17-18 that we are going to add 2,346 new kids to the district. That should put us somewhere in the range of about 24,000 kids total throughout all of our offerings. So you can kind of see the breakdown there. We are, you know, growing at a faster pace on the Texas college prep side of brick and mortar 1,226. Talk here just a little bit more as we go through this about the responsive ed virtual learning and what we're doing there with some of the changes with TXVA and things like that. We'll talk to you a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes. So you can kind of see we have one new school that's going to be opening this fall. That's Premier High School in San Antonio. It's going to have about 120, 125 kids when it opens. And this fall, we are going to be focusing on more new construction for under the TCPA charters, and we're going to take a look at that on the next page when we get to that as well, so you can see some of the new constructions that are underway. We currently have new construction that is that you guys approved. That, as you can see next door, building next door will be finished this August. Will be open. We also have Tyler that's currently under construction that also be open this fall. And some of those numbers that you see increasing in the brick and mortar are because of some of the new schools we have open. So let's look at under program enhancements, moving down to the bottom of page 1 on virtual. The Texas College Prep TXVA campuses, we are moving from TCPA over to the Premier High School charter. I don't know if you want to, Chuck, do you want to go into the details of why and why we're moving it from here to there?
Sure.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So if you remember, the Texas College Prep Academies was where the virtual school was located for grades 3 through 12. And last year we moved 9 through 12 over to the Premier. We are now moving the middle school 6 through 8 to the Premier charter. We've been talking to our contractor about realigning to the accountability system that actually is designed for the students that end up in that program. And then we'll have a very small group. We're not going to take any new kids. We'll have existing kids returning that are in 3 through 5. So we're having to obviously realign the budget itself around the fact we're taking and moving students in virtual from standard accountability charter to the alternative accountability charter. And at the same time, as you see responsive ed virtual learning and the 500 kids, that's us using our own curriculum and using our own teachers to offer a virtual environment for students under that setting instead of under the vendor setting.
All right, so those students we're having that are moving in that, they'll actually have the opportunity, you can see there, to re-enroll under the responsive ed virtual or the Premier High School responsive ed virtual or the Premier High School Texas Virtual Academy. That takes us over to the second page on page 2. We're also going to be using some new compensatory education funds that we were able to get for the virtual schools in the range of about $2 million additional funds we were able to secure this year, which will go forward into next year. We're going to be establishing some brick and mortar learning centers to support the at-risk students with supplementary resources. So just to kind of explain what those would be, we have a lot of virtual kids out there that occasionally need more help with face-to-face, instruction. So we're going to actually have a couple of places. I think we're looking at one here, somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and one in the Houston area that will open. That'll be, you might consider it like a Sylvan Learning Center type storefront location where students could come in and they could come in and actually get help if they're in a virtual environment to a face-to-face person. We'll also use some of our brick and mortar locations that we have scattered out all over the state, where they'll be able to come in at certain hours of the day, maybe when school is let out, like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They may be able to come in the afternoon or evenings and be able to get some support at our brick and mortar locations as well, with our virtual kids out there that need just a little bit more support. So that's one thing that's going to be going on. The TCPA and Premier High School responsive ed virtual learning is expected to grow 500 students each in the 2 charters. are under the two different programs. They're going to have 500 students each under those two different programs there, which would be 1,000 kids. So looking forward to moving forward with that opportunity with virtual. All right, so the next big area of the budget is the employee impact. We like to bring this to you guys every year just to kind of talk about what's happening with employee compensation at the campus, at the teacher level, the campus administrative level, the campus directors, what kind of benefit enhancements are we doing, and merit pay increases and things like that. You've seen this chart before. This chart kind of gives you a historical back to 2012, kind of some of the things that we've done over the past 4 to 5 years with base pay merit increases. So what we put in the budget this year in 2017 in the fall was a 2 to 5% for campus staff and a base merit pay increase, as well as we've also budgeted a 2% merit increase on the corporate side. And then incentives, we have what we strive to do with our teachers is we pay their base pay is 90% of the districts. Take an average of where they're at, and their base pay is 90% of what most of the districts in the area where their school's at. 90% of what the district is what their base pay ends up being. So the goal here is to be able to get teachers performing at a high level so that they can actually earn 10% more than what the district pays through an incentive program. So that's what it means when it's up to 110%, that they could actually, a teacher could actually make more than what they could at the district if they're performing at a high level. And we have, Chuck has spent an extensive amount of time developing out a incentive program for the schools where they can qualify in different areas of academics and financial areas. So
what you don't notice looking at this from this chart is last year the average for teachers was 2%. This year it's going to be 3%, so it's going up a little. And then with campus directors, the last year there was not a base pay increase. This year there is of 2%. So those are two exciting things that we're able to do this year. So again, if you're looking at the chart, it just looks like it's similar because each year we're showing you kind of a range, but it is a little more this year for campus staff.
So you can see there how it's kind of broken down in the text there below. Teachers, that's consistent with what Chuck said there, the average 3% pay increase for the teachers. The campus administrative staff would be an average of 2%. Campus directors, the base pay, that'll be increasing by 2%, as you mentioned. We also, we are into this would be our 3rd year of doing contracts for our campus director. We are wanting to get our campus directors signed on to a contract, so we make sure we've secured those staff for a year. We're also having conversations about other staff who may need to have contracts. We have specialist teachers like special ed and Title I that we're also having conversations about as to whether they should have contracts because they're highly sought after by districts, and oftentimes we hire a special ed teacher, and maybe district comes along and can hire them maybe a little bit more than what we pay on their base and pull them away. So we're talking about that right now as to whether we should consider having some additional staff with contracts. But for sure on the campus directors, they would get an average of 4.5% contract signing bonus. That would be for returning campus directors. So they get that 50% at the front end and 50% at the end. So when they sign the contract within 10 days at the front end of the contract, they get 50% of that. If they stay the whole year, they get the other 50% at the end. And then for new campus directors that are new coming in, that would be a 2.5% signing bonus. And then there's individuals, based on size of school or performance of a particular school. We do look at individual adjustments as needed for individual campus growth as well. So last year, moving on to benefits enhancements,
Let's mention some of the campus directors will be receiving 2-year contracts where we're, instead of 1 year, where we're building buildings or where there's significant growth in the size of the school, then we'll be issuing 2-year contracts, not just one. So by far the majority of directors get a 1-year contract unless they're in a situation where, again, we're building a building and we need them there for stability. Yeah.
Is it the same model for campus directors as it is for teachers, kind of that 90% of base pay?
It's not. It's we think at market rate for campus directors, but that's kind of hard to target because there's not many campuses that only have 300 or even 800 kids that are K-12 in the district, because they're going to be a elementary of 600 or a middle school of 1,200 or a high school at 3,000 around there. There's really no comparison. So we think we're paying them at market rate for the size of their schools.
Okay, moving on to the benefit enhancement. So last year, you guys may remember, we supplement the corporation supplements employees' benefits insurance. It's obviously it continues to go up. We made a step increase last year. It was $250 per month is what we had been supplementing. That was last school year, and in the budget last year we increased that to $275. That was step 1. So we're coming back now asking, and this is in the budget as well, asking to go ahead and increase that one more step to step 2 to $300.
Which is only $25, but how much is that per month?
Well, it's $25 per month per employee that participates in the health.
Is it 50? Did y'all verify that?
So it's. Do you have a number?
Off the top of my head. 50,000, that's what I thought.
$25 an employee is $50,000 a month.
So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 600,000 just total throughout the year. What it would cost us to be able to do this. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it does add up.
Oh, yeah, 600 sounds
Quite a lot.
change. Yeah, but I think it's, I mean, certainly good. You know, certainly not impact cash flow. It's a good benefit.
It helps us on the recruiting side too, because it makes us more competitive with what districts. We did an evaluation last year to see what districts were doing, and they were closer to the 300. So we did this in 2 phases so that we could get as close to what the districts are doing, so we can be more competitive as we hire people.
Okay. So in the 2-year contract, that has no cost other than if you have a bad teacher, you can't whack them.
Well, the contract, Chris, you want to speak to that as far as the contract, how it relates to those kind of issues where you have someone who's not doing their job?
Yeah, we still base our ability to terminate an employee on their ability to follow through the contract. Still.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, outside of cause though. So,
But even it talks about campus ratings for a campus director.
Yeah, it gives us great flexibility. What we can do is show you the template, but it's the closest thing you're going to get to an at-will contract. So it gives us great flexibility.
but gives them a little bit of comfort that they don't have to go looking for a job in a year.
That's right.
Unless they,
Sure.
And that's for the 2 years or for campus director. A few campus directors.
not a very big percentage. Okay.
Is whack a legal term then?
Okay. It's my little mafioso sounding kind of thing.
All right, moving on to page 3 of the summary, some of the highlights on the revenue item we put in here. Per ADA revenue, this is, Chuck, you mentioned this at the early onset of the meeting, that right now we don't know what legislation is going to do in increasing us funding. So we're in the budget, the way we budgeted is we're budgeting based on current year, what we would receive in revenue for the current year for next year. And we'll come back with an amendment once we find out what legislation is going to do that's currently pending. So total revenue increase from one year to the next. We talked about the 2,300 new students to the district is going to, we project a revenue increase from local, state, and NSL, National School Lunch Program revenue of about 13.7. So we're going up about 13.7 in total revenue from last year to this next year. We budgeted in the campus expansion for the Premier High Schools $1 million, and for the Texas College Prep we budgeted $1 million. What that $1 million would be, as we get down here in the next section, talking about the bond impact and construction projects that are currently underway. That $1 million would be set aside mostly for new furniture for these new campuses that will be opening up next year and in the fall of 18 to get into that. So we may come back and request some additional expansion sites for the Premier High School as we get into this the spring and February of next year. Usually we come to you guys in December or January to ask for additional expansion sites for the 2 charters. We are looking at some plans right now to increase students in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the Premier High School, so we may be coming back to you. So we wanted to go ahead and put that here in the budget if we had any expenses for expansion of high school. So moving along, anybody have any questions? Any questions? Moving right along in the series, the bond impact, we're going to just add this year just so you've got a idea of what's happening with bond funds. We have about $134 million that's currently total outstanding. The debt interest payments are going to be about $5.16 million, which will allow us to do these new constructions we have underway. TEA did approve Frisco for us to move forward with that for a new site, so that will be underway in Frisco. We have Founders Class Academy at Flower Mound will also be coming online. It's currently located at Parker Square in Flower Mound, so it's going to be moving out to the property at Flower Mound, where Frisco has approved us that we're past all the city stuff at Frisco. We're at the 11.5 hour with Flower Mound. Flower Mound is interesting in getting it through the city council, but we are about 30 days away from the final, what we believe to be the final vote on Flower Mound, so we can move forward with that. Classical Academy of Shirts. You guys remember we purchased a property from what's the name of that charter? Shekinah Radiance. We purchased a building there that currently houses the K through 7 elementary school. And we are going to need, in order to be able to continue to expand the high school, to add a section onto the front of the gym that will be approximately $6.2 million to add a additional building on that property to continue to grow at the high school. So that's we're currently working on that with the city, getting the bids for that, making sure we move forward with that. And then I believe we've talked about in this meeting before the purchase of Carrollton. The Carrollton First Baptist Church. That's going to be underway. $7 million purchase and about $2.6 million estimated remodeling cost there. So that's kind of what we're gonna have going on in new constructions next year.
Maybe 2 more trees and a little more dirt, and the deal's done.
That's true.
Is Carrollton building a new place?
Carrollton is already built out off of the Sam Rayburn, and they have what's called the fields of First Baptist Fields or something, and they're right off of it. And they're going to build another building next couple of weeks.
So one of the things last on this page 3, pending campus reassignments. We have submitted a request to TEA to move 4 of our TCPA campuses from the TCPA charter over to the Premier High School charter. You can see those are listed: Fallbrook Classical Academy, Mainland, Founders Classical Academy, Dallas, Founders Classical Academy, Mesquite. Chuck, do you want to elaborate on the reasons with how that affects accountability?
Yeah, you all know about this because you approved it, and we submitted this to TEA. But this will move any school that's under 3 years old. They will move to the AEA charter. TEA approves it if they're schools with high population. For instance, Dallas and Mesquite, we opened with K-8 populations, whereas the typical school district or typical charter is going to only open K-2 and then loop up every year. So the kids kind of grow with the program. We have a different model because we believe the 7th graders matter now. We can't just wait. And so this, we've talked to TEA. The question's going to be, will they actually approve it? But they seem supportive of it, and I think they will, where they'll move these schools because we're doing something unique to where they're in the AEA accountability for a couple of years. So we think it'll be approved, and if it is approved, you'll be seeing that change in an amendment.
And
Hey, real quick,
honestly, those schools right now are currently budgeted under the TCBA charter, so we would have to come back to move those revenue and expenses over if it gets approved.
not a budget question, program question. Remind me, what's the difference between Founders Classical Academy and just the regular classical?
So Founders is a partnership with Hillsdale College in Michigan, where they're more like a consultant and giving us their program, their classical program, and we're implementing it with fidelity to what they suggest as a 160-year-old college.
Yeah.
Classical schools were our Vistas that have been in existence. They were not classical at the beginning, but we have been implementing things, and it's kind of just our version without Hillsdale involved in it of classical. Okay. There was a point in time where you may have heard, if you've been on this for a while, we referred to them as, well, they were K-5 schools, like Carrollton. But that's changing too, to where they're going to all become K-12 at some point.
All right, last, but not least, we just want to make sure we cover this every year, the corporate administration. The administrative fee of 15% of all state revenues will be charged to Premier High School and TCBA, brick and mortar schools, and ResponsiveEd virtual. So
this is important because if you move these, if you have a fee, which, as you remember, we had the partnership with ResponsiveEd School Services that TA approved. We had some concerns about some retirement type issues, benefit issues, that we decided not to go that route. After the first 15 months, we moved back to the model we had been operating under. And what's important is this board understands that we're charging that fee internally, and that 15% is going up and becoming unrestricted funds at the charter holder, the 501c3 level. Still restricted 100% by IRS nonprofit rules, but there's different rules. As you remember Corey going through at the beginning, there's different rules for use of public funds versus the 15%, which would not be public funds. They would be restricted by IRS rules, not state of Texas public funds. So you see this every year, and we make sure we really point out that when we have the resolution, if we do that later, part of the resolution that Chris and JB and Joe Hoffer think we should have is that you specifically spell out, because again, one of the items you saw at the very bottom for use of public funds is whatever the board decides, right? You want to speak to any of that? All right. So here's a list of things that would be covered under, an administrative fee. It's not that you'll see the 501c3 budget later. It's not that we're using all the fees to, as we continue growing, it's not that we're spending the 15% on administration and all the breakdown. It's just, again, the issue of we have the right as a charter holder, as a nonprofit, to have a fee that becomes unrestricted for use in the nonprofit realm. Any questions on that? It's important y'all understand that, and that we do it in that way.
all right.
So before we go on to looking at recaps and all that, and I'll let Robert do that or whoever else, but any thoughts, any input from you guys on any questions you have on these kind of big picture things we're doing? We do find out that there's $1.5 billion that passed the Senate. It's passed the House, goes into the Senate, and passes. Then we'd come back to you and have an amendment on what do we want to do with that? How do we increase teachers even more if there is that additional funding for the state? And of course, that meant to us. Todd Webster sent me that he got a data run, and I think it was $5 million. What it would mean to the TCPA, and then a couple of million to Premier out of the 1.5 billion. So pretty significant to us.
Is the where is the autism funding bill?
That's going to pass.
Is it moving?
Yeah, that's House Bill 23. It's going to pass. It looks like it's passed the House. It'll go into the Senate. Shouldn't have an issue. And we've talked for all these years about the foundation school and the loss. Several hundred, sometimes $300,000 loss. And then we're able to use other funds like virtual, pay for it. And you remember the speaker coming to the school about 9 months ago? And there's a bill that's, again, I think it's going to pass the Senate. It's already through the House, which will fund a $500,000 per year over 5 years. So $2.5 million will go to schools like that school. So that's a big deal when you consider we've been losing a lot of money and not been able to provide necessarily everything we want to do. An influx of another $500,000 a year for 40-something students. It's going to be exciting to have pass. And then there can be up to 10 of those type of schools. So we're going to be looking for some partners and doing something here in North Texas, and then possibly in Austin and Houston. So we may have 4 of these programs, and they would get an additional $500,000 a year.
The other thing that's that's been passed by, let me make sure I get this right, passed by the House, but it's still in the Senate, is possibly some additional facility funding. But we won't be able to benefit from that. It'll still be a couple of years. But
it's $200 a kid, and it's not for at least a year, maybe 2 years, if it passes, right?
So yeah, so it's out there as a possibility.
So obviously the issue, we all have as leaders of the organization is how to take care of our staff. That's always an issue. Something that's very difficult in that just for the one example of $25 a month per person, how much that balloons into at $600,000. So it is a challenge. It's when you wonder, why did we pay at the 90% level? Well, first off, biggest thing is we get on average charters. This isn't just us, but if you take an average of the entire state, we're getting some reports 12, some reports 1,800 less than the district. In Louisville's spending around 11,000 a kid, and we're spending around 8,000. You get in a district like Louisville, there's a huge gap, right? So that's closed as you look across the state, where it's this 12 to 1,800 number. So we get less money. So it's how do you compete, right? The second thing is we want to build in, like businesses do, we want to build in an incentive program where teachers that do the best get paid the most, right? And that's just not been something they do in education. Education, everybody's going to get the same based on the years they've been teaching. But it has nothing to do with performance. So we're trying to do those two things, and we kind of gauge, are we being successful by comparing our turnover rate to other charters. It's not fair to compare it to districts because it's different. So in that realm, we're average. We're similar to KIPP and some others, which we're not real happy with. We'd like to get that percentage down to where we're retaining more people. But unless we kind of fund that gap in facility funding, it's going to always be a challenge on that part. So what we try to do is we try to create a culture where it's just different. If you want to go back into a traditional district and work there for additional pay, it's a different world, right? And we've had people leave. A lot of people leave. that then some do come back and say, yeah, we don't want to be in that culture, we want to be in this culture. So the more we can do that, where people feel like we really do treat them as individuals, not a part of just a big teacher group, then I think that'll help bring down it'll help increase the retention, I think. Obviously, the more we build buildings, costs us money, and we got to deal with all the financing issues, the interest you're paying on it. Nice thing is it helps with cash flow in the here and now as far as dealing with teacher pay. Because if you can get that 15% facility cost down to 12%, then you have 3% to do something with, right, with teachers. So as you consider it as individuals, personally, we don't want to have that kind of debt on mortgages and things. But when you think of the long haul of a 40-year to 100-year company, or longer, like districts where you just realize you're going to be in business and you have this steady stream of revenue, then it allows us to do some of those kind of things like we've done with this $130 million bond we have right now. But it brings down the expense every year, where we can do some stuff on the staff side.
Since so much is driven by the ADA number, I mean, how are these estimates that are showing quite a bit of growth? So we're not just guessing, right? How do you factor this? Is it history? Is that just the target that the target markets you're moving into? How are you making this?
So this is down to 10% growth across both charters, and last year was very similar. 2 years ago, and then fifth year going back, it was running around 33%. So we've already pulled back on what we were projecting. We were always projecting low on the budget. Do you want to speak to that, either one of you? I think you really can't put the numbers on the current brick and mortar.
It is, we have a number of schools that are adding grade levels because they're rolling up. So we are putting a focus on the schools that we have, getting some of those that are K5, K6s to be able to, and as a part of the 6-year plan, getting them to K12. So
wait lists.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this isn't across the board. You're not gonna, if you had a list of all the campuses, you wouldn't see every campus with growth.
Yeah.
This is the campuses in the areas that have more demand.
So basically, the campuses that have been established for several years, for the most part, we look at them fairly static year over year unless there's some particular addition or something.
Adding a grade, right?
Yeah, I just didn't know if the growth was coming from new campuses added or growth within the existing campuses, or where
It's
that projection was
mostly on the existing.
Yep. On page 1, that 2346, that's existing. And then there's only 120 that are new schools, which is one premier in West San Antonio. Now the 500 on virtual learning for each charter, that's the only data we have to go on is we have 7,000 kids in the other virtual program, and we're going to be, we think as we've had to limit what's going on in that virtual because of academic performance, we think there's going to be a desire to continue in virtual, which is how we get those numbers.
Do you attribute the growth on parents recognizing the benefit their students are getting in a charter school, telling other parents, and then that brings?
I think word of mouth is a lot of it. We do have a good marketing team that put out good marketing collateral and advertise just to make sure there's not a gap in that word of mouth. But I think it's definitely a significant part of it's word of mouth. People just like it, what they're getting. It's smaller, it's quality, it's an option.
Yeah.
Good questions.
We're growing from our vistas going on into K-12.
Right.
That way we don't lose our kids.
And that's the big thing is you do keep them is the, it's kind of ready made. If you can figure out how to get kids in kindergarten and first grade, second grade, and then just keep them, it's a ready made client base for years to come.
They don't want to go somewhere else.
It's all they've known, and it works. Whereas Premier is completely different scenario where kids they're coming and going a lot because they're 17, 18 years old. But with the Vistas, the TCPA, that's definitely true. And we haven't, most of our Vistas, there's only a couple of them that have gotten to that point, like Amarillo. The rest, without ever opening another school, we have to build some buildings, but without ever doing anything else, we're going to be able to get to 35,000 kids when we did the projections. We just grow everything out to K-12, 3 sections.
Okay. Any questions, anybody?
And please, as you think about it, we really do want you involved in the budget process. If you have questions, thoughts, please call. And we have a few months before the new fiscal year, so we still have time to look at some things and consider those suggestions.
Okay, we can take a look at the budget recap page. It's under the tab called Recap. So that's the one-page summary of, that's really the big picture. If you want, I always think that I like to look at this. It's really the big picture right here. So we've broken this down. You can see by the TCPA charter, the Premier High School charter. You also see the 501c3, and then the consolidated over to the far right. So we are projecting total revenue across all of the businesses, $177 million. As revenue, we're projecting total expenses $165 million with a projected net surplus, $11.6 million, about 6.6% on the margin for the overall business. You can see by each of the 2 individual charters, the margins are actually a little higher here, and we're going to talk a little bit about some things we've moved around on the actual TCPA and the Premier charters. We're projecting a retained or a net surplus on the TCPA charter at $4.6 million. On the Premier High School charter, a $4.5 million net surplus on the Premier High School charter. That's up from last year. And some of what we're doing, we took quite an extensive amount of time to look through where the staff were coded to. And one of the big things we changed this year was kind of shifting around the charter administration, the non-campus staff. We had some non-campus staff because, let me just take an example, like a regional director. A regional director was charged to the campus because let's say they have 5 schools. Their responsibility is to the school, so 1/5 of their salary would have been charged to the campus level as part of the expense of being able to run that campus. So if that campus had been standalone, these are expenses they would have to be able to have because they would have to have somebody to be able to do these other things that were non-campus administrative staff. So some of the challenges as we run through the year as we're looking at the budget and we're trying to see our total administrative expense, we have to kind of remember, well, wait a minute, we've got some of the administrative expense here in the charter holder, and then we've got some administrative expense in the charter schools. So what we've recommended in this budget is kind of shifting around some of those salaries. So for the TCPA budget, we moved benefits, payroll and benefits included. We moved $4.2 million from the TCPA charter over to be an expense on the 501c3. And any of you guys want to jump in and make sure I'm saying this right, because we want to make sure you understand what we're talking about here. On the Premier High School charter, we moved $1.7 million from the school over to an expense under the 501c3.
And the thing that really matters to most is the incentive program for campuses is It will allow more people to participate in it based on our incentive program because they will have an easier time as a charter meeting having the surplus or meeting their budget requirements because we don't have as much being coded to the charter itself from what now is going to be under the 501c3.
She's kind of moved overhead from the campus back to central
Personnel.
support.
We moved a lot of the personnel.
Yeah.
There were expenses that we charged frequently to the charter holder just because of the ease of doing that and where we thought it shouldn't be an expense on the campus. But there are some of those expenses that we in our conversations needed to go back to be an expense at the charter school. They should have been coded to the charter school. These are things and decisions you could do it either way. It's not. I want to make sure we all understand it's not wrong to do it either way. It's just a method of how you're allocating expenses. So I don't know if you remember some of the expenses that we reallocated back to the charter schools.
Some of the insurance and bonding costs, we were carrying those costs at the charter education level and allocated most of the campus. So now we allocated to the campuses. Depreciation expense on capital items. We were able to attribute depreciation expense to the individual campus, so we can distribute it down. There's some facilities costs that the TCPA charter carried that were being charged to the charter administration. There was a small dollar amount, but we allocated them to the campuses because they're really a charter expense and we contribute to the campuses. Those are the main ones.
So this will give us a better, easier view of we're looking at administrative staff and whether or not we have our too top heavy. As if we are, we'll be able to see it easier by having the budget designed.
That's in my world of multi-site churches. Struggle is how much central support you have supporting all these campuses, and you're trying to say, man, is this campus profitable, if you will? Well, some of it depends on how much burden you apply to the campus versus central support.
It's exactly the same way.
Yeah,
exactly the same.
Okay.
One of the other big things that we in the budget was the curriculum department payroll, and the non-payroll expenses were moved from the TCPA and from high school charter, and were allocated 100% to the 501c3. And we will be are expecting to do a bill back on the curriculum expenses to the appropriate charter.
The bill back's already in here in the budget under TXVA.
That's right.
So it's already shown.
That's right. That's right. Right.
All that means is for years, over 10 years, we had the premier paying for curriculum development because the curriculum was used primarily. Actually, it was exclusively premier using the mastery-based, self-paced curriculum. As state laws have changed and we've been doing more with virtual, we're able to use that product, but we're going from just 9 to 12, which is what a premier is, down to third grade. And so really the curriculum should be being paid for and designed out of virtual fund. And that's what Robert's referring to.
The other things on the notes here, I think we've already covered. We talked about bond interest expense already. We talked about that. That's the ADA change. We talked about that. The K-12 program fee is calculated at 88% of the regular program revenue. So we actually, they get 88%, we get 12%, right?
To do everything. They hire all the teachers, administration. They pay for everything.
So I think we've covered most of that we need to cover. So any questions on the overview? Just kind of recap. Questions?
Is that projected, that net surplus, is that like historically, or is that compared to last year? Or?
If you compared it, that's what Robert was referring to.
Yeah,
If you compared it, you would see it going up on the charters, coming down on the 501c3. for the reason he described.
Overall, with I think I calculated a 6.6% margin overall. What was our margin in the budget? The audit, last year's audit.
Last year was much lower, and we had some very specific
Because of the RESSI.
So yeah, last year was kind of an anomaly due to the manner in which a couple things that happened. School services was operating for 4 months in the year, so it was taking fee for 4 months a year, and not taking fee for 8 months a year. This budget, there you go, no school services fee, any portion of it. As well as the associated expenses are there. There was also an issue with the auditors, since the auditor was actually completing their activities farther past the end of the fiscal year. They ended up pushing about $1.5 million worth of expenses into the prior fiscal year that typically would not have been done, just based on the fact they were later, and they looked at the expenses and just made a determination, you know what, these really are in some way related to the prior fiscal year. So they pushed them back. It turned out about $1.5 million. So we ended up with a $6.6 million surplus last year, and we would look at that as being should have been closer to a $8.1 million surplus, and then factor in the fact of the 4 months with school services. That's about another $1.3 million. So that would be about a 9.4. About 9.4. Which then comes in very similar to the range of which we normalize. That margin is very much in line with this. Yeah, exactly. So they came in, but I want you guys to understand that if you go back and look at the audit, you're going to see 6.6 million in net. You're going to go, wait, how does that relate to 11 point? And there are just some things that happened that were anomalies last year.
All right. We're moving, let's move on to the budget by function. This is the most important piece that we should look at for you guys today, because this is what you actually approve, and this is what we make the motion here to approve the budget. In a few minutes, we'll finish going through this. These 2 pages is basically what you approve it by function. This is just another view of it. You know, you've already seen kind of the summer page, but this kind of just breaks it down by the 2 charters, Premier High School and TCPA. We talked earlier in the budget training under the next tab of the budget by object. The way that breaks down by object is if you look at under that, it breaks down by 6,100. That's the payroll expenses, the 6,100 numbers of payroll expenses. 6,200 is the professional contracting services. 6,300 supplies, materials. 64 other operating costs. 65 is the debt expense, and the 8,000 is other losses expenses. So you don't actually approve it at that level, but it's just this is just here for you to see kind of how it takes it from the function level and breaks it out into the object codes for each of the 2 charters. So that's here for you to see as well. So that is pretty much, what we have. Is there any questions, any more detail? We could take another 4 hours to continue to go through detail. But let's stick to function if you'd like.
Let's go to the 4 hours.
Yeah. 4-hour version.
So we have been meeting with, as a team, Joseph and Corey, and James, Ken, myself, Robert, every week for the last 2 months. So there really are just a massive amount of details. Every campus, I don't know, did you bring a printout you have a printout just to stand up and show every campus and all the details?
Yeah, I think you said the other day.
I mean, it's just, and that's not even that's just a very small part, but that's each campus. All this expands out for every single campus, 70 campuses. Seriously, we could spend days talking about it. But as a board, you're asked by, you're required by law to approve this budget by function, which is kind of in the middle of your notebook. And when we go back into, go to the separate item, you'll be voting on this if you feel comfortable. But we want to make sure you really feel like you're a part of this process and you can ask questions, you can understand it, you can spend time with us, understanding what we're doing, and we're not, just trying to push it on you, asking you to vote for something. But as I've seen this grow, as Robert's seen this grow over the years, it's you have to have all these different players, and we're not nothing like a Wells Fargo, size wise. Gets to a point where you just have to trust people that are doing their piece, and then you end up having to trust an administration that's doing it. But again, we're open to letting you see and be involved in every part of it you want to be. Anything else, Robert, before we go back to separate items? Thank you. Good job. Any questions? You want to go back to separate items then?
Yep, do it.
All right. So we've been recording the whole time. Excuse me. We have number 4 under separate items. C4 is consider approving the 2017-18 budget. And the resolution, I don't know if we have it typed, but the resolution is that we need, if you are ready to do it, is to approve the budgets by charter, since we're under the Texas board meeting right now, by charter, by function, including the 15% being charged by the 501c3 to the charter operations. Anybody want to
Make a motion?
make a motion?
Yes, say so moved.
Everybody's like, son.
Can you put that in words?
So we need a motion to approve the budget by charter, by function, including the 15% roll up to the 501c3.
So one
17,
motion
18.
or multiple?
It's one motion.
Yeah, I think we do. All right, so we're going to make a motion to approve the
17, 18.
17-18 fiscal budget, including the 15%
Administrative roll-up.
Administrative roll-up,
And by function.
and we'll do it by function. Do I have a second?
There you go. By charter as well.
Oh, by charter
By charter,
and by function.
50%.
Second.
Second by Marvin. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one's here to oppose. That motion to approve passes unanimously.
And that's really it, unless you have something for the Texas board meeting.
Texas board. Now all we have is the 501c3.
Texas adjourned?
Texas is adjourned.